So if you read the comments in my last video, you'll know that I basically lost my account, or at least all the items on it, had to basically fresh restart, and the league starter I chose to go with this time is a Fire Trap of Blasting Inquisitor. And this character, set up for about 10 divines, really leverages self-hit for two main mechanics. Firstly, self-chill, which gives you 28% action speed in my case, using Winter Weave and Call of the Void. And number 2, Duress's Defiance, which gives you 100% Onslaught effect, and also Onslaught when hit if you have 1 Endurance Charge. In my case, I'm using a Min Endurance Charge Anoint. Combine this with a Forbidden Rite 4-second trigger in your weapon with Lethe Shade, and you're able to maintain these buffs up permanently. I'm really able to leverage that 4-second Onslaught because of Slave Driver's Hand, which gives me a ton of trap throw speed, multiplied even further by that action speed. I only use this character for boss rushing and sanctum running. Let's go into this in detail. I think there's a lot of really cool efficiencies to explore. So I'm gonna go over the gems first because it's probably the quickest thing to cover. I have a Fire Trap main link, I have Shield Charge Faster, Bear Trap for single target. I'm running Haste full time because this is converted to Trap Throw Speed with Slave Driver's Hand, Frostwing for movement, Petrified Blood for permanent low life without losing defenses, Vitality Arrogance for a bit more regen, Skitterbot's Infernal Legion. This is actually really important in combination with Righteous Fire as ways to apply burning damage for the Fire Trap of Blasting, which is what I'm actually using. You need a way to apply burn, and normally you can do this with like crit or maybe with Ignite Chance, but I'm actually a Leadership's Price build, so that's not possible. These are really cool. And then a dual curse setup, and then finally Divine Blessing with Zealotry. I am taking the mix of EB and MOM on my tree to help out with sustain really easily. It's not as good defensively as, not going EB MOM when you're taking Corrupted Soul, because this kind of splits your defense, but it's still fairly efficient. And because I don't really care about defense, I'm pretty much only running Sanctum and I'm doing boss rushing. I'm gonna skip this bottom side of the tree. A lot of Inquisitors these days, especially casters, do path through here, because you have a lot of access to spell suppression through here. But especially with charms, if you want to gear that way, or just like not caring about things in softcore, I've decided to skip suppression entirely for now, at least. The rest of the tree is pretty stock standard as far as a crit trapper goes for topside. Fairly easy to follow. I would really recommend grabbing Tolerance on this kind of thing because I need a lot of Chaos Rest to play this thing out. Again, this is almost super not defensive. I don't even enable my Determination. I don't even know where it is. It's over here. What I do want to do, bosses, I switch out Haste for Determ, and they have like a good amount of PDR. I mean, 11k max Fizz is not too bad, but it slows down the character in Sanctum, and I really don't need defense. The items is what makes this build really cool. So, the weapon. I just bought this off trade. You kind of either need to metacraft this with Veiled Chaos, or just purchase one on trade, but a 4-second trigger, crit multi, spell damage, this is just 3 mods. But that 4-second trigger is mandatory. Damage shield, really easy to get damage shield these days. If you have an open suffix, I want to benchcraft suppress because it's probably how you hit suppress cap. Helmet with regen, life, whatever, ES. I mean, again, Chaos Res is a really important baseline stat for this build because if you take too much damage from the FR trigger, you won't even be able to regen all of it because the build's kind of scuffed. Duress's Defiance, super cheap at the time to buy any sort of corruption and then just manually 6-link it with Tainted Fusings, Tainted Jewelers. I've got a +2 trap gem, plus AoE also works. I think plus duration works on Fire Trap of Blasting, even though there's no burning ground effect. Slave Driver's Hand, a bit more expensive, probably down to Divine Orb. Really powerful gloves, especially when you don't play Swift Assembly, especially when you don't have any additional trap throw, like no Sunblast, none of that. You'll super overcap if you do that. Slave Driver's Hand gives you so much trap throw speed. I think right now, I'm at a 0.26 throw time. I think this might actually be understated, because I kind of forget what I'm running. But I am playing Swift. Alright, I put in Swift for charge traps, because Slave Drivers actually gives you charge generation all the way. Boots, regen, res, move speed. I mean, they're pretty bare bones. Leadership's Price, really OP. I keep using it on these builds because guess what? It's super efficient. It doesn't always feel great because your crit is rarely gonna be capped on the first hit, but as soon as you land 1 or 2 hits, the crit really scales up quite quickly. Call of the Void, Winter Weave, this is your baseline self-chill setup for builds that don't want to think too hard about it. It's really good, but I don't think you get the enemies chilled by your hits part of this. It does work even though you're running Leadership's Price because you're not chilling enemies. The self-chill setup does work even with Leadership's Price as long as you're using Call of the Void. And then I have a leather belt, which does some stuff. Flasks are basically just for speed and, I mean, defense. I don't really know. They don't really matter. I mean, it is what it is. A Glorious Vanity is really big. You really want to get Doriani on an Inquis. If you don't run this, well, you lose, like 1k ES. It's a lot to have. I just think it's really good to do. If you're fitting in Discipline, I would consider skipping this and running like a Lethal Pride instead somewhere else for like double damage, Fizz taken as, that sort of thing. And then this Efficient Training. This is only able to be a leadership tree because of this efficient training. Without it, I'm off balance by, 160. With it, perfectly balanced as all things should be. And then I'm running 3 separate charms. This is Ash Regen, really powerful generic charm. Regen in general is going to be really nice to get. And then I run 2 more regen charms. They have crit if you haven't dealt with crit recently, but when I do have brittle up from leaderships after hitting, I'm like super overcapped on crit. So this doesn't even matter. But when I don't have it up, this matters a lot, right? This gives you like 10% crit chance. So it's more of a consistency thing than a damage thing. All in all, pretty solid to have. And then finally, just a jewel. So in sum, this is still a pretty simple build. It's just a Inquisitor that is running RF, that is using Leadership's Price. We've seen this before, but one of the most powerful early game single target skills I think is Fire Trap of Blasting. At a baseline, it's like 3 to 4 times stronger than most other baseline spell skills, and if all you're trying to do is blast single target, this thing is just absolutely incredible. Especially with the technology of using Skitter Boss with Infernal Legion, or running Righteous Fire to apply Burn for the sake of Fire Trap Blasting, it becomes really easy to enable this thing. And honestly, Leaderships is just so unmatched in the early game. This health hill mechanic. As far as the self hit mechanic goes, I think it's something that people should be considering a lot more on their builds. Self chill did get worse because of the loss of replica hot-headed, I think it was. But this chest I think is actually really cool. 40% cast speed, attack speed, movement speed. That level of onslaught scaling is incredibly powerful. And especially if it's on a really cheap chest, that means you can kind of have your corruption of choice and also really easily 6-link it. Later on I might invest this build and try to go into like a really heavy endgame bosser, but that probably wants to go assassin instead just because the ZHP stuff is really easy to build, easily able to eclipse 2 billion DPS. But for now, this is the character that I've been using for my really painful but forced restart.